Whenever you're ready.
In India, child labor is a widespread problem. The story of one little girl encapsulates the personal nature of this issue, even though it is on such a large scale. Pooja Birla, an 11-year-old child laborer, works relentlessly to mine mica, a highly valuable resource in the makeup industry. Though she has worked roughly 15 to 16 hours daily for the past 3 years, Pooja exclaims that she's terrified every time she enters the mines, as her friend was killed from falling debris and the air in the mines is extremely dangerous to breathe in. In these industries, money-driven employers and corrupt governmental laws will manipulate children like Pooja to continually be subjected to child labor, constantly risking their lives to provide for their families. Stories like Pooja's have sadly become a very common theme across India, as millions of children are continually subjected to harsh and inhumane conditions within their work environments.
According to the Friends of Salam Block Trust, which is a non-profit organization dedicated to helping child laborers in India, official records estimate that there are around 12 million child laborers in India. However, due to the secretive nature of child exploitation, non-profit organizations estimated that there's actually an astounding 60 million child laborers in India. The scope of this problem is so significant as it means that countless children just like Pooja are risking their lives every day. As millions of children are risking their lives, social activists have dwelled into this issue and how it originates and the nature it is exploited. One of the most notable social activists, Kailash Satyarthi, as a Nobel Peace Prize recipient, found on average kids would be employed as young as 7 years old, work at 7 days a week, up to 17-hour shifts in different industries such as clothing and mining. While he has created organizations such as the Bachpan Boa Dolan or the BBA to conduct raids on factories freeing up to 80,000 kids, he realizes that his efforts are small on the grand scheme of things.
In analyzing how child labor originates, Satyarthi records the methodical reasoning that employers go through. Poverty-stricken families are extremely vulnerable, as both the parents and kids are willing to do anything to make ends meet. First, employers will entice kids with money and education along with employment. They will then use their work to... Oh no. As children are being held to sleepless depths, employers are actually sacrificing the children's education as they are trying to help their parents oh so desperately. According to a study done by Mini and Pratibha Gayal, who both hold between them doctorates in sociology, economics, and business from Punjab Agricultural University, did a study with 302 child laborers in the state of Punjab on whether they attended school or not. Based on the statistics shown, 57.29% of participants said that they did not attend school, while 42.71% of participants said that they did attend school. Now, these numbers display a lack of education within a small group of children in Punjab, when in reality, this is a widespread issue across much of India. The value of education is being withered away by child labor, and this very issue leads us to our question.
These profound social problems, as outlined by Emma and Ron, led us to an intriguing question. What steps can be taken to mitigate child labor in India? In answer to this question, we considered many different possible solutions, but we found that some were completely unattainable. Taking into account the politics of India became imperative to fully understanding the feasibility of our propositions.
The first solution we considered was one such unattainable proposition. On a surface level, new legislation seemed to be the best and easiest solution possible.
In theory, this solution seemed to work well. Provisions could be made for completely banning child labor for ages 14 and under, while also strictly defining work that can be done between ages 15 through 18. This would make child labor illegal. Plus, in the best case scenario, such a new amendment or bill could even go so far as to virtually eliminate child labor in the country if it was coupled with enforcement at local levels. Such a thing would almost completely solve the problem theoretically. Lastly, for the violations that would still happen, clauses in the amendment or bill could include stricter punishments for these child labor violations. This would prove to discourage employers from breaking the law and would further act to mitigate or even eliminate child labor in India.
With all the benefits of the theoretical implementation of this solution, it took a very serious limitation to make it unappealing as an option. Currently in India, this plan is unattainable. According to Al Jazeera, the Bharatiya Janata Party, or the BJP, currently holds a majority in the lower house of the Indian parliament, while it holds the most seats of any one party in the upper house. Pictured here is Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India and a lead BJP member. Under his guidance, an amendment was actually already passed, which allows for the employment of children below the age of 14 if it is a, quote, family enterprise. This has led many activists to claim that this will actually increase the number of child laborers, including the president of the Center for Rural and Education Development Action, who called it, quote, retrogressive. Clearly, under the current administration, such a plan completely banning child labor is not possible.
Another solution we considered addresses enforcement, which represents a major problem to the elimination of child labor. This too seemed like a possible solution at first, but eventually became infeasible. The hope of implementing such a solution would first and foremost be the adherence to the two laws. This would serve to significantly reduce child labor, and this form of exploitation is often done illegally. A second part of this would be increased prosecutions and eventually convictions for those who did violate child labor laws. Prosecutions and convictions would send a message to violators that these crimes will not be tolerated and would eventually mitigate child labor.
While in a different political climate, this could be a great option, this is nearly impossible to attain across all of India. The limitations of this plan are severe. As can be seen in the map of India's parties, India's states are extremely diverse in its ruling majority parties. As enforcement would be more effective at a state level rather than a national one, it can be seen that this plan would take steps for different political parties to take greater enforcement in hands. Also, as can be seen in the map, the BJP has a majority in many of the states, making this reprimand to have current stricter legislation towards child labor enforcement highly improbable.
In light of these difficulties, we had to look for a different solution. It became apparent that the solution that is most viable consists of education programs. This would encompass increased educational opportunity for the children of India, as well as support for new and existing programs designed to encourage education in place of child labor. This educational program consists of 3 steps. Our first step being expansion and increased funding for programs like the National Child Labor Project, which is a national scheme with many rehabilitation centers that targets children from the ages of 5 to 14, in which they withdraw them from work and into educational centers, with the ultimate goal of full child development. The program consists of bridge education, vocational training, meal stipends, and many other benefits. So our first step would be further funding for the National Child Labor Project specifically, and many other programs that are taking the same steps to eliminate child labor. Our second step would be addressing the social stigma around child education development needs. Many families disregard the importance of education as seen as a waste of valuable time in which money can be accumulated, especially in Indian culture where hard work and manual labor are so regarded that education has been put on the back burner. And finally, our third step, which is the emphasis on adult employment and a placement of higher wages for child labor. With child labor being so much cheaper and means of production, adult labor is not necessary for employers. So with raising wages for child labor, adult unemployment will drop with the result of a better economy.
Despite the numerous and significant benefits as outlined by Easton, there remain some very serious limitations. Perhaps one of the most intimidating of these limitations is the fact that it will require funding and resources. In an economy that relies on child labor and other low-wage jobs, resources and funding would simply not be easy to receive. It would require priority from the government in order for it to lend any kind of support. Hopefully, however, this would be somewhat mitigated by the United Nations funding of some of these programs. Second, this solution would take time. In order to be truly far-reaching, this solution would really require substantial amounts of time in order to reach the different parts of India, especially because child labor is so prominent in rural areas where smaller villages mean that the population sizes reached would never be substantial. Finally, as per many solutions addressing widespread problems, this would not completely eliminate the issue. Child labor would still exist in India despite the best efforts of these educational programs and their leaders. However, the hope would be to mitigate child labor in a truly feasible way while also stressing the importance of an invaluable education in India.
Even though this issue is virtually impossible to solve on such a widespread scale, our group believes that implementing our final solution will benefit children like Pooja who work under dangerous conditions the most. Fixing legislative loopholes and tightening enforcement policies proved to be too unrealistic in such a large country made up of many independent states. While there are still numerous large-scale limitations concerning our final solution, expanding educational opportunities for children in India is the most beneficial solution because it will provide an alternative to child labor while also benefiting the economy. Our group reached this conclusion in the hopes that India's future generations will not have to face the same exploitation as their predecessors, while also gaining an invaluable education that will provide them a fighting chance at success. My group would now like to welcome questions.
All right. Thank you. All right, so we will go ahead and start with the oral defense questions. We'll go ahead and start with Bree. Bree, describe how the content of the team presentation was changed as a result of group discussion.
Well, before coming together as a group, I had the preconceived notion that we were going to do a half and half type of situation, half being background information and the other half being solutions. However, through collaboration and group discussion, we decided that we could spend all day on background information because it's such a serious issue. What we really needed to get to was the solutions and explaining why some of them work and why some of them don't work.
All right, thank you. Easton, in the future, what change would you make to your group norms, and how would you expect that to improve the team presentation?
One thing we definitely had some issues with was communication. There's definitely some times where some people were farther along on their IRRs and then some people were working on TMP presentations, and we weren't exactly always on the same page. So by further communication with each other, we can stay on the same page and come to a solution a little bit quicker.
All right, very good. Ron, reflecting on your colleagues' work, which one had the greatest impact on your overall understanding of the problem that your group identified?
Initially, at first, I decided in my RRR that one of the solutions was we could take further government reprimands to help mitigate child labor. And this was partially linking to Bree's lens. Now, as we investigate into Bree's lens, there's a lot of political loopholes that are exploited. And this actually happened to shift that political reprimands in my solution would not have helped. And this would actually shift us to think that long-term education would actually be more practical than governmental reprimands.
All right, thanks. Emma, having finished your project, what, if anything, do you consider to be a gap in your team's research that, if addressed, would make you feel more confident about your conclusion?
The biggest gap that I feel that we were missing in our research was a historical lens, because we had trouble finding a solution because we have background information like how other countries have solved their child labor problems. And I feel like if we had a historical lens, the solution would have came a lot faster for us.
Okay, thank you. All right, and Clarissa, last one. What was the strongest counter-argument to the solution or conclusion your team identified, and why?
So something that our team found throughout all the solutions we considered was that every solution just took too much time and too many resources. Because India so heavily relies on child labor as a part of their economy, taking it overnight is just not possible. It can't be solved so quickly. So we needed to consider a solution that would provide still a solution to our argument, but also we realized that in doing so it was going to take a lot more time.
Okay, all right, thank you guys. Good job. You can clap for